Hello and welcome to this last presentation where we invite you and your students to become guardians of a burned forest, and let's see how we can make this happen. If you're like me, maybe you have been avoiding visiting burned areas because it's too upsetting or heartbreaking. And although the sight of a burnt tree is heartbreaking, the power of nature to regenerate is amazing and surprisingly rewarding. So in this activity, students follow the natural regeneration process after a forest fire close to the region to ensure that it's progressing smoothly and to identify possible risks. The activity is proposed for 10 years and older, and we propose to split it in 3 parts. So you do a preparation activity in class, and then you do the main field study in the burned area, and then you do the synthesis and wrap up again in the class. It's not so demanding. You just need to follow the protocol that you normally do when you do outdoor excursions and surveys, plus some tips that I will explain to you. So let's start with the first meeting, that is for preparation. You can start with a brainstorm, asking the question about what the forest can offer us. So you can hear the answers, the replies, and the ideas of the students, and we expect them to come up with factors like giving us oxygen, provide us coolness, protecting the climate, even if they don't know the term climate resilience. They will probably mention the climate, the flood protection, absorption of carbon. The forests also provide a shelter for animals, but also they provided services regarding our well-being, so our mental health, our physical health. They provide ideal spaces for sports so that we can do outdoors and entertainment. So after we have introduced already the students to the idea of the services of a forest, we delve deeper to the burned forest, which is the topic of our activity. So we ask them if they have visited a burned forest, what impressed them, what do they remember, what they have noticed about the plant's regeneration, if it happened naturally. Maybe they have been already participating in a reforestation activity and they can share their experiences on that. Talk about the kinds of plants that they remember the forest had, and so on and so forth. So our main question here is what happens after a fire. And to most people's mind, the immediate term that comes in our mind is reforestation. So actually, reforestation is not the best choice after a fire, especially if we're talking about the Mediterranean type of forests. Reforestation in this case should be our last resort when natural regeneration is not feasible due to repeated fires in a short time in the same forest or for a certain type of trees that cannot regenerate naturally, or it takes too long. Also, for those that have participated in a reforestation process, there are many things that can go wrong, from the planting as such and then to maintenance of the young trees, that most of them actually die unless they are watered immediately, irrigated frequently immediately after their planting. So according to scientists, the most favorable option for such a forest is to leave the forest to regenerate on its own. So what is this natural regeneration? It is a process that starts actually immediately after a fire. Even in 3 or 4 months after a fire, you can see signs of regeneration, and you can see the new plants growing in a burned forest. And actually this is a natural process for mature Mediterranean forests that are older than 15 or 20 years old. So if we were to become burnt forest guardians, what would that role entail for us? This is a question that you can ask to the students, and you can brainstorm and gather their ideas. Probably together with them you will come to the factors such as that they need to study the area, the burnt area, the maps and what is around. They will need to do repeated visits to monitor how the process of regeneration is progressing. They will need to monitor and record the young plants' development. They will monitor for illegal activities, mostly grazing or even encroachment, and so on. And they will talk to others about their role as guardians of a burned forest. If you decide to do this activity with your students, there are certain tips that you need to follow before the visit. So you need to choose a recently burned area, and maybe local NGOs, the forest department, or this website copernicus.edu can guide you into selecting such a site. Unfortunately, no matter where you are, probably you have a burned area close to where you live. So when can you go with your students? Actually, you can go sooner than you think. So from 6 months up to 3 years after the fire. So considering that the fire takes place in July or August, in the next spring, you can already visit for the first time the forest, the burnt forest, with your students. And then, if you wish, you can do repeated visits every 6 months or every 1 year. Of course, you need to make sure that the site that you choose is safe and accessible. Ideally, it should have some shadow pockets, so some unburned sides of the forest that are accessible to you and your group. This is unnegotiated that you need to pre-visit the area yourself before you visit it with your students. I think this goes without saying that this is something that you need to do for any outdoor activity planned for your students. You need to check the site yourself before. You will need to prepare the worksheets. In this activity, we have suggested some exercises that the students can do, and the type of the questions that you can ask in such a worksheet, but definitely you need to customize it to suit your needs. Also, the students need to do some exercises, maybe with the cards. We have some cards in the activity, in order to understand how the regeneration process works, and maybe to recognize some plants, especially if you're coming from an urban environment and the trees are totally unknown to them. If you're feeling a little bit not so confident maybe to do this on your own, how about inviting a local expert, someone from the forest department or the NGO or even the municipality, an agriculturalist that could help you with the plant identification, with preparing the worksheet, and with giving information to the students while you are in the field. And of course you have to follow the safety protocol while moving the class outside to get the permissions and so on. The more you involve your students in this preparation phase, the more effective your field survey will be while you are in the forest. Now we come to the day of the visit. The visit as such can take up to 2 hours, but if it's a school excursion, of course it can be longer, but just beware of making sure that you don't expose to your students to sun. Make sure that you have enough shaded spaces. So when you're in the field, the first thing you need to do is set up your base. So this is a space where you can collect the backpacks and all the materials carried by the students and your lunch boxes, etc. So you have this base somewhere in the center of the activity, and you plan all things around it. Remind to the students of the safety and behavior rules while we are on the field, and at the beginning we propose you to do some kinetic activities and games in order for the students to release tension, especially if they have been in the bus for some time. So once the tension is released and the students feel calmer, you can gather them and do some introductory questions. So have they been in this forest before? What are the colors that they see around? Do they see only black, or do they see signs of regeneration? Maybe they can recognize some types of plants. Otherwise, you or the expert that you might have with you can help you in training students to recognize how regeneration happens and what types of plants actually grow back immediately after the fire. And so there's a sequence of plants as they grow back after the fire that are all very important. And actually the pictures we have here are from a Greek forest that has been burned in the northern Greece, and these pictures are 4 months after the fire. So you can see how the force of nature. So it's time to hand out the worksheets. You assign small groups of 2 or 3 students per worksheet. You hand them out. Maybe you have prepared them in the first meeting you had with them in the lesson. Otherwise, you just walk them through the worksheet so that you make sure that they understand the questions and how they need to work to fill it in. An important part of the methodology, since we are working with canvases, is to explain how this method works. So you do a sampling of a canvas yourself. So a canvas is just a square meter. So you show them how to measure it and how they can put some ribbon or some rope around it, or just wooden sticks, and how they need to count the young plants growing inside. And then you let them fill the worksheet. Make sure that you have eye contact with all the groups as they scatter around your base to fill in their worksheets. Some groups may choose to take multiple canvas samples, and that's very okay, of course, as long as the samples are representative. So make sure that you take canvases from areas that are green and areas that are less green. Stay alert and be ready to reply to questions, because for sure they will have a lot of questions in the way that they will need to work to fill in the worksheet. So after all groups come back, make sure that while you're in the field, you do an oral debrief. So you already start orally talking about some of the most critical questions of the worksheets and getting their impressions. While you're doing that, they can have their snacks, and as said before, if you have enough shade, or if it is not such a shiny day and there are clouds, cloudy, the weather is cloudy or a little bit cold, you can for sure enjoy the joy of being even in the burned area, so of being in the forest. So we come back in class for our third and final meeting that has to do with their synthesis. It can take one lesson hour. And what do we do? Of course, we discuss about the students' impressions from the visit. We complete the worksheets and report as a class of how we think that the natural regeneration process is progressing, and if we have found risks or something that inhibits it, to whom we should report it. We have these conversations, and as a follow-up, we also propose that you do a mini survey in your school to other students or to the parents, asking them just one question: what should we do after a fire, to check if the misconception of immediate reforestation stands with them. So if this stands, maybe the students need to consider how they can convey to them the message of the natural, how important it is to let the natural regeneration process so as forest guardians, they could create posters to convey their messages. Here are some indicative posters from other similar activities having to do though with forest. And of course, in this with your students, that if they want to become the Burned Forest Guardians, what would be their role, what they would need to do. As we said, talk to others and do repeated visits in the region. And you as a teacher, of course, you can access both the knowledge and their creativity, both in their posters and in whatever follow-up activity they decide to do. That's all from my side. Good luck with implementing the activity. We're waiting to see your comments in the evaluation.